My ex-girlfriend announced her engagement to the CEO she cheated with in front of 400 guests and 500,000 people watching online. Then she pointed directly at me. Julian, did you come here to beg me for another chance? I looked at the imported ice sculptures, the string orchestra, and the giant livestream monitor broadcasting my face from the absolute worst possible angle. No, I said. I came for the free food. The chat lost it completely. Sterling Cross stepped between us in a white suit that cost more than my building. You should go, man, he said. This is a private family celebration. That annoyed me, mostly because 4 days ago I'd caught him in the back of my own car, wearing my jacket with his tongue in my girlfriend's mouth. So when Harper folded her arms and asked, loud enough for the mics, whether I'd finally found a single woman on earth willing to date me, I lifted one arm and pointed at the balcony. Above the ballroom at the rail stood a woman in a crimson gown, perfect black hair, icy blue eyes. She watched 400 people humiliate me the way a CEO watches a quarterly report she already knows is going to disappoint her. Diana Vale, Harper's mother. Actually, I said, I married her. The ballroom went dead silent. The cellist dropped his bow. Then the chat, which had never in its life understood restraint, detonated. Wait, the mom. Bro became a stepdad for revenge. This is the greatest day in internet history. Call him stepdad supreme. I want to be clear, I had never married anyone. I said it because it was the single most devastating sentence available, and because Harper's face in that moment was worth more than the dignity I'd pawned off years ago. It was a joke, a good one. A joke that was, at that exact second, being clipped, captioned, and stamped onto a thumbnail of my face with the word stepdad in 40-point font. Sterling laughed first. Then Harper laughed, that bright performative laugh she saved for cameras. Then 100,000 strangers agreed on a fact that was not true. Up on the balcony, Diana did not laugh. She looked down at me for one long second, cataloging me like a line item, and then she turned and walked out of sight. That's insane, Harper snapped. My mother would never marry a broke busboy. Agreed, I said, and yet. I gestured at the monitor where my own face now wore the caption Stepfather Supreme. Trending. Security started moving before I finished the sentence. I set down the champagne I'd been holding purely as a prop, gave the room a small bow I immediately regretted, and let 2 men in earpieces escort me toward the exit. By the time they threw me onto the curb, the hashtag had a name. Stepdad Supreme, 200,000 believers. Someone had already photoshopped a wedding portrait of me and a woman I had never spoken to. I told myself it would blow over by morning. I have never been more wrong about anything in my life. My apartment did what it always did at night, which was fail to be warm. One room. A radiator that made threats it couldn't keep. A mattress on the floor and a folding chair I used as a nightstand, a desk, and on bad days, a dining table. I ate cold rice standing up because sitting down felt like admitting the day was over. On my cracked phone, the number climbed, 300,004. At 11:58, the building's elevator groaned to life for the first time in recorded history. At 11:59, someone knocked on my door in a rhythm too clean to belong to any of my neighbors. At midnight, the exact stroke, the kind of timing you only get in fairy tales and lawsuits, my phone flashed white. Public consensus REACHED 412,000 believers. Reality overwrite initiated. The words didn't come from an app. They printed themselves on the inside of my eyes and were gone, and my own hand, was suddenly holding a marriage certificate that had not existed 4 seconds ago. Heavy cardstock, embossed seal, my name, her name. A date 2 years in the past that I had actually spent mopping the floor of a convenience store. I opened the door because I had run out of better ideas. Diana stood in the hallway like a scalpel someone had abandoned in a dumpster. The crimson gown was gone, replaced by a black coat and an expression that could bill by the hour. 4 bodyguards filled the space behind her. 2 suitcases sat at her feet. A diamond ring I had absolutely not purchased sat on her hand. Her eyes swept the room once, the mattress, the folding chair, the rice, and filed every failure without a flicker. Why did my husband leave our daughter's engagement party? She said, in a voice with no warmth and no floor to it. Without me, my brain stopped. She lifted her own copy of the certificate, identical to mine. And in the way she held it steady, unsurprised, already 3 moves ahead, I understood 2 things at once. She remembered the real world exactly as I did. And she was significantly better prepared for this than I was. Get your things, she said, already turning for the elevator. You don't sleep here anymore. Behind her, my phone lit up one final time. New rumor detected, believers 9,000 and climbing. Projected overwrite tomorrow midnight. The limousine smelled like leather and money I didn't have. Reginald drove. He had graying temples, a mustache trimmed to a threat, and the resting face of a man who had delivered catastrophic news to 4 generations of the same family and never once raised his voice about it. Congratulations on the marriage, sir, he said, watching the road. We met an hour ago. Very good, sir. I gave up. Diana sat across from me, reviewing something on her phone as if she hadn't just abducted a stranger from a 4th-floor walk-up. Every few seconds her eyes flicked to me, then away, filing me under a category I clearly wasn't going to enjoy. The estate arrived the way a mountain arrives. Gates, a driveway longer than my commute, and a house that had apparently been designed to make guests feel like an accounting error. The entire staff was lined up on the steps. In the rain, at midnight, to welcome me. They knew my name, all of them. A silver-haired woman in a spotless gray uniform stepped forward, took both my hands in hers, and beamed like I was a grandson returning from war. "We're so glad you're finally home, Mr. Vale," she said. Martha, according to the warmth radiating off her. I had never met this woman. She had apparently been worried about me for 2 years. "Thanks," I said. "It's good to be." I looked at the marble, the columns, the fountain that cost more than my life. "Wherever this is." Then something roughly the size of a bear hit me at the knees. It was a dog. An enormous, catastrophically fluffy Bernese mountain dog with paws like dinner plates and zero concept of physics. He knocked me flat onto the wet steps, sat on my chest, and began washing my face with the focused joy of a creature reunited with its favorite person. "Bentley missed you terribly," Martha said, delighted. I had never seen Bentley before in my life. Bentley disagreed. "Bentley licked my ear like we'd fought in a war together." From above me, Diana looked down, not at the dog, at me, pinned and drowning under 140 pounds of affection I hadn't earned. "He has poor judgment," she said, and walked inside. Morning arrived with Harper's face on every screen in the house, which was several more screens than one house should legally contain. She'd gone live at 8 a.m. sharp. Fresh makeup, tragic expression, the specific lighting influencers used to look brave. "My mother has been manipulated," she announced to 2 million people eating breakfast. "Julian is broke. He worked at a convenience store. He faked everything to trap her. By tonight, everyone will see he's a complete fraud." It was honestly a solid plan. Attack the one thing about me that was undeniably true. I had $63 and a folding chair. I set down my coffee, which Martha had brought unprompted, exactly how I liked it, in a way I found deeply unsettling, and read the comments, waiting to watch my reputation die. It did not die, it mutated. Because the internet took one look at "he's secretly broke" and decided that no, a man that calm in a room full of billionaires wasn't poor. He was so rich he was pretending to be poor, to stay humble, to understand the working class. The top comment had 4 million likes. "A real billionaire doesn't need to flex." Another, "He worked a night shift to study ordinary people. That's next-level leadership." I had worked the night shift because my electricity was about to be shut off. The internet filed this under philosophy. Diana appeared behind me, read the screen over my shoulder, and set down her own cup with the quiet click of a woman recalculating a forecast. "Your daughter tried to expose me as poor," I said, "and instead she's convinced 11 million people I'm a secret trillionaire monk of humility." "Harper has always been good at influencing public opinion," Diana said. "She's simply never been good at aiming it." At midnight, the lights flickered. Public consensus REACHED. Reality overwrite initiated. My cracked phone buzzed against the nightstand. I checked my bank balance out of habit, the way you check a wound. $63 had become 18 million. I stared at it for 5 full seconds. Then I refreshed because surely the universe had made a typo. It refreshed to $18,140. The universe had added interest. Diana didn't celebrate. She handed me a suit the next morning and informed me the board of Vale Group had called an emergency meeting, and that as her husband and, per a biography that had written itself overnight, the reclusive strategist behind the company's biggest wins, I was expected to attend. "I once lost money selling bottled water at a marathon," I told her. "The internet finds you brilliant. Try not to correct it out loud." 12 board members stood when I walked in. One of them had clearly already blamed 3 failed projects on me and was bracing to blame a 4th. A screen showed the company's current catastrophe, a flagship hotel bleeding millions because the luxury rooms sat empty. Everyone launched into brand segmentation, market psychology, premium positioning. I understood roughly 4 of the words. Then a nervous intern came in with coffee, early 20s, drowning in a gray suit 2 sizes too big, clutching a stack of folders to his chest like body armor. A board member snapped at him. He flinched, dropped a folder, and I crouched to help him pick it up. His badge said he worked at the hotel. "Why are the rooms empty?" I asked quietly. He hesitated. "Because people can't book them, sir. The site needs approval from a private concierge. The concierge only works 10 to 4. Most international guests try to book at night." I stood up. "Has anyone," I said to the 12 most powerful people in the room, "tried letting customers actually buy the rooms?" Silence. The chief operating officer blinked like I'd performed surgery. 20 minutes later, the booking restriction was gone and reservations were climbing. One board member whispered that I'd seen the true problem instantly. Another decided I'd stayed silent for years on purpose, to let the executives expose their own incompetence. I looked at Diana. She had one hand pressed over her mouth, hiding what was unmistakably a smile. The intern got a promotion he didn't understand. I got a corner office I hadn't asked for, and at midnight my phone lit the ceiling. Reality updated. Julian Vale, the silent architect of Vale Group. New rumor detected. Believers 6 million. He was trained by monks. Projected overwrite midnight. The monks arrived before breakfast. I was eating toast in a kitchen the size of my old apartment when Reginald appeared in the doorway with the exact tone he used to announce dinner. Sir, 3 holy men are in the courtyard. They claim to be your former masters. I put down the toast. I've never had a master. I've had a manager who yelled at me about ice machines. Very good, sir. Shall I send them away? Before I could answer, they were already inside, 3 men in gray robes, moving with the silent, gliding speed of people who had spent decades doing things I could not spell. The oldest gripped my shoulders, looked into my eyes, and burst into tears. You have returned to us, he wept. Master Ironpalm. I looked behind me. There was no one there. Who is Ironpalm? Your monastery name, he said, devastated by the question. That's a very intimidating name for a guy who dropped out of community college. The rumor, it turned out, had gotten specific overnight. 6 million people now believed I'd trained in secret at the Iron Cloud Monastery, tucked. The internet had decided, somewhere in the Swiss Alps, because nothing says lethal ancient martial arts like a country famous for chocolate and neutrality. There I had supposedly defeated the legendary Grandmaster in single combat, refused to inherit the temple, and vanished to live humbly among ordinary people. The convenience store was apparently part of my spiritual journey. Harper's influencer friends were already in the courtyard filming the monks. Somewhere in the city, Sterling was undoubtedly watching too, and the Grandmaster himself, the man I had supposedly beaten, had issued a challenge for that night. A live-streamed rematch, 80 years old. He wanted his honor back. Diana read the challenge off her phone with the flat calm of a woman scanning a merger clause. You'll decline, obviously. Obviously. If you decline, Reginald offered helpfully, the internet will decide you're hiding an even deadlier technique. Diana closed her eyes. I ate my toast. The monks watched me chew like it was scripture. At midnight, the lights flickered. Public consensus REACHED. Reality overwrite initiated. My phone buzzed against the nightstand and printed a single line onto the black screen. Skill acquired, falling mountain. Activation condition, the opponent must strike first. I stared at my own hands like they might have grown something. They looked the same, tired, toast crumbs on one knuckle. I tried cautiously to feel like a master. I threw a slow punch at the air. Nothing happened. I punched the air with more conviction. Still nothing. Down at the foot of the bed, Bentley lifted his enormous head, dropped a chewed stick pointedly onto my ankle, and waited because even the dog now expected a demonstration. It only works, I told him, reading the fine print again, if someone attacks me first. Bentley considered this. Then he lay back down, deeply unimpressed. It was the most accurate review the technique would ever receive. In the morning, I told Diana I possessed exactly one martial arts move and could only use it if a stranger tried to hurt me. She turned a page of her newspaper without looking up. You attract unreasonable people. You'll be fine. The rematch was held in the estate's courtyard because Harper had promised her followers closure, which is influencer for content. By nightfall, there were cameras on tripods, a ring of gravel, and 400,000 people watching live to see a convenience store employee get folded in half by an octogenarian. The Grandmaster stepped into the ring, 80 years old and built like the concept of regret. Wispy white beard, gray robes, and eyes that had watched a great many confident young men make a great many final decisions. Master Ironpalm, he said, bowing, show me the falling mountain as you did on the temple steps. I really can't stress enough how much I've never met you. Modesty, he smiled, sad and cert, still your sharpest weapon. And then he moved. I want to be clear that I did not do anything. He came at me faster than an 80-year-old has any legal right to move, and my entire body did what bodies do when a mountain is falling toward them. It panicked. I twisted sideways to run. My foot caught the gravel. I started to go down. The Grandmaster committed fully to a strike aimed at where I had just been standing, hit nothing but night air. His own momentum carried him forward. He tripped over my collapsing body, went up, went over my hip, and landed flat on his back in the gravel with a sound like a dropped bookshelf. The courtyard went dead silent. I was still on the ground, so was he. We looked at each other, 2 men who had both just fallen down, one of us on camera, then all 3 monks gasped in unison. The falling mountain, the oldest whispered, tears streaming. He turned the master's strength against him. He never even raised a hand. That is genuinely not what happened, I said from the gravel. Even now, the monk sobbed, he hides his mastery. The live stream detonated. IRONPALM is real. He beat a Grandmaster without throwing a punch. Bro is a walking documentary. The humility. The range. The Grandmaster rose, dusted off his robes, and this was the part that ruined my week. Bowed to me with genuine, tearful respect. Thank you, he said, for reminding an old man that the mountain does not chase. It waits. Fell over? Yes, he agreed, moved beyond words. Perfectly. Across the courtyard, Diana had a hand pressed to her mouth again, and this time she wasn't fast enough to hide it. Harper stood beside her camera crew looking like she'd personally funded her own humiliation, which to be fair she had. I got up, brushed the gravel off a suit that cost more than the Grandmaster's entire monastery, and my phone buzzed in my pocket. Reality updated. Julian Vale undefeated. The mountain that waits. New rumor detected. Believers 300,000 and climbing. If their marriage is real, they'd survive a couple's test. Projected overwrite midnight. Diana lowered her hand. The smile was gone. Harper, she said quietly, reading her own screen, is bringing a marriage counselor. Harper didn't knock. She marched into the drawing room the next morning with a camera crew, a ring light on wheels, and a man in a neon pink suit. The man was in his 30s. His hair had been sculpted into a pompadour stiff enough to survive a car crash. He carried 2 whiteboards, one under each arm, the way other people carry weapons, and he smiled with teeth so aggressively white they looked like a legal liability. "Julian," he beamed. "I'm Dr. Rex, certified relationship diagnostician. 2 million subscribers, I'm here to heal or reveal." He clicked a marker like a switchblade. Diana looked at the strangers rearranging her furniture. "Why are there people in my house?" "If your marriage is real," Harper announced to the 400,000 people already watching, "you'll have nothing to hide. Dr. Rex tests you separately. If your answers match, I'll admit it's real publicly. If they don't," she smiled at the camera, "everyone finally sees my mother married a con artist." I looked at Dr. Rex's suit. "I already have a lot of feelings about this and none of them are about my marriage." Diana leaned toward me, voice low. "I can have all of them removed in 90 seconds. "If you throw them out on a live stream," I murmured, "the internet decides we're hiding a body." She sat down. "Begin." The first question flashed on Dr. Rex's whiteboard. "What does Diana drink in the afternoon?" I wrote without hesitating. "Black tea, never coffee afternoon. She never finishes it, forgets it the second a document opens." Diana's card said the same, minus the second sentence. Dr. Rex's smile flickered. "Lucky guess," Harper said. "Where was your wedding?" I had no memory of a wedding because to me there had never been one. The universe had given Diana 2 years of a marriage and given me exactly nothing but the certificate. I wrote, "The only honest thing depends which version of reality you ask." Dr. Rex frowned at it. Harper laughed. Then Diana turned her card over. She'd written, "He'll say, it depends." The room went quiet. She hadn't answered the question. She'd answered me. "Which side of the bed does Diana sleep on?" I wrote left. Diana wrote right. Dr. Rex gasped like he'd caught a murderer. Harper actually clapped. Then I turned my card fully around so the camera could read the rest of it. "She sleeps on the right." I wrote left because I don't sleep in her room. "Separate bedrooms, ask her." Diana looked at my card for a long moment. "He wrote the truth," she said, "instead of the convenient lie." Dr. Rex slowly erased his own celebration. Then Dr. Rex, sensing his content slipping, turned dramatically to Harper. "You answer one. What does your mother do when she's frightened?" Harper rolled her eyes. "My mother has never been frightened in her life." On cue, because the universe has terrible comedic timing, every light in the room dropped and surged. Somewhere a rumor had crossed a threshold. It lasted half a second, but in that half second I watched Diana go completely still, set down her pen, and quietly square it parallel to the table's edge. "She goes quiet," I said. "Not loud, she straightens whatever's closest to her hands. She's doing it right now." Every camera turned. Diana's fingers were still resting on the perfectly aligned pen. Harper stared at her mother like she was meeting her. She hadn't known. 20 years and she hadn't known. "What does Diana hate most?" Harper wrote losing. Dr. Rex wrote dishonesty. From the doorway out of frame, I caught Sterling. He'd let himself into watch, mouthed the word control. I wrote one line, "being handled like an asset instead of a person." Diana read it. For a few seconds she forgot the cameras entirely, the way you forget a room when someone says the true thing out loud. The chat, which had spent 3 days laughing at me, stopped laughing. Then it was her turn to answer about me. My worst habit. The first thing I do when I wake up. She answered all of it from a history I'd never lived, fluent and certain, and every answer was right because in her world it had happened. Dr. Rex saved his favorite for last, savoring it. "What is Julian most afraid of?" Diana had 2 years of fabricated memories. Not one of them held the answer, and I watched her realize it, the small pause, the flick of her eyes to me instead of to the page. She wrote slowly, "That someone will do something kind for him he can never pay back." I stopped breathing for a second. That wasn't in any rumor. No stranger online had invented it. She'd simply looked at a man who'd worked double shifts his whole life sooner than owe anyone a favor, and she'd seen him. Dr. Rex tallied the cards with the enthusiasm of a man watching his own show get cancelled. We'd matched on 9 of 12. Harper had matched her own mother on 2. I leaned toward her. "Do I get a Father of the Year mug now, or does that come later?" She threw a whiteboard at my head. It went viral before the crew finished packing. The clip did not conclude that our marriage was fake. It concluded something far worse. He knew what she does when she's frightened better than her own daughter did. She knew his one secret fear. They're not faking. They're obsessed with each other. By nightfall, the rumor had a name and 300,000 believers and a supercut of every glance we'd exchanged, scored to violins. At 11:59, we both understood what was coming and ran for the stairs. Midnight caught us on the landing. Public consensus REACHED. Reality overwrite initiated. The door to my bedroom did not slam, it simply wasn't there anymore. The wall drew itself smooth and solid where the doorframe had been, plaster over the space like it had never held a room for me at all. Diana stared at the blank wall. I stared at the blank wall. Martha came around the corner carrying fresh linens, entirely serene. "Madam," she said, "shall I turn down your husband's side of the bed?" Diana closed her eyes. "The internet," she said, "has no respect for architecture." My phone buzzed, reality updated, 1 bedroom, 1 bed, new rumor detected, 200,000 and climbing. He still loves Harper. Projected overwrite midnight. The rumor that I still loved Harper was the first one that scared me. Not because it was embarrassing, because it was almost true once. Before the engagement party, before the car, before the jacket, there had been a version of me who'd cared about her. And Harper still had the receipts. She posted them at noon. Old messages, real ones, from the actual world the internet couldn't see. Just tell me the truth, I still love you. I'd written that months ago to a person who was, at that moment, texting me back from Sterling's bed. Out of context, time-stamped into the fake history, it looked like a married man still chasing his ex. By 3 o'clock, the rumor had 400,000 believers. By 5, my phone printed a warning I'd never seen before. Rumor approaching consensus. Projected overwrite romantic attachment reassignment. I read it twice. Diana read it over my shoulder, and for once neither of us said anything clever. It won't rewrite a document this time, she said quietly. It rewrites you at midnight. If enough people believe it, you won't be pretending to love her, you'll actually love her. That's the worst sentence anyone has ever said to me, and I once got fired over a voicemail. She was already reaching for her phone. Then we deny it, publicly. Now, 200 reporters filled the Vale ballroom by 8. The same ballroom I noted where Harper had pointed at me a week and a lifetime ago. The string orchestra was mercifully absent. Everything else, the cameras, the monitor, my face at the worst possible angle, was exactly the same. Diana walked out beside me. Harper and Sterling stood at the back where the guilty always stand. A reporter didn't wait. Mr. Vale, do you still love Harper? No. Then explain the messages. They're old, so is the relationship, so is the part of my life where I thought she was worth begging. Harper stepped into the light. He's lying. She held up her phone, and the giant monitor filled with my own words, my own name, time-stamped into a history that had never happened. The room turned into noise. My phone buzzed against my chest. The believer count was climbing in real time. 9 hours to midnight, then 8, the projection sliding toward reassignment like a tide. There were 1,000 safe answers Diana could have given. A statement. A denial. A lawyer. She took the microphone instead. My husband does not love my daughter, she said, and the room quieted just enough to hear the next part. He couldn't, he's too busy being in love with me. Then she set the microphone down, took my face in both hands and kissed me. It was not 3 seconds. It was not the strategic press of a woman managing a headline. When she finally stepped back, the ballroom had gone completely silent, and I had forgotten how sentences worked. Was that in a contract somewhere? I managed. No, she said. Good. The clip outran the scandal before security cleared the room. The internet has watched a great many staged celebrity kisses, and it knows the difference. He never looked at Harper like that. She wasn't acting, that was real. The he still loves Harper rumor didn't just lose. It got buried under a new one, larger and softer and far more dangerous in its own way. They fell in love for real. By 11, it had 80% of the believers the old rumor once held. And I realized, standing in a bedroom that now had one bed and no door, that I had no idea what I actually wanted the universe to decide. At midnight, the lights flickered. We both braced. I watched the wall, half expecting a wedding album to bloom out of the plaster, new memories to pour into Diana's head, some fresh forged proof that we adored each other. Nothing happened. No documents. No photographs, no fabricated anniversary. The lights steadied. The house stayed exactly as it was. Then my phone lit once with a line I would think about for the rest of the story. Rumor rejected. Genuine emotion cannot be created by rumor. Diana was standing across the room. She'd read it too, I could tell by the stillness, the way her hand drifted to square the edge of a book on the shelf and then stopped. The system could hand me a company, a martial arts technique, $18 million, and a dog named Bentley. It could delete my apartment and my bedroom and my privacy. It could not manufacture what she'd just done downstairs. Which meant that if there was anything real between us at all, it had to have come from us, not the internet. Neither of us said it. That silence was the closest Diana had ever come to a confession, and the closest I'd come to admitting I wanted one. Bentley wandered in, sensed the moment, and lay down directly on my feet. He has poor judgment, Diana said softly. So do I. For about 11 seconds, that was the most honest either of us had been. Then my phone buzzed again, and the temperature of the whole story changed. New rumor detected. Believers 40,000 and climbing. Julian Vale is terminally ill. Doctors have given him weeks to live. Projected overwrite midnight. I stared at it. Diana crossed the room and read it over my shoulder, and this time her hand didn't reach for anything to straighten. It reached for me. I didn't start that one, I said. I know. Her voice had gone very quiet, very still. That's what frightens me. The internet, it turns out, does not love a billionaire. It adores a dying one. By 9 that night, the rumor had done something none of the others had. It had made people cry. 40,000 believers became 400,000, became 8 million. By the time Diana's crisis team finished their first conference call, 80 million people mourning a man who was, at that exact moment, eating leftover pasta at a marble island the size of a car. They made tribute videos. Strangers filmed themselves weeping in parked cars. Former colleagues I had never met shared tender memories of conversations that had never happened. Someone cut a 12-minute montage titled Iron Palm's Last Descent, scored to a cello, and it had more views than my entire life had witnesses. Diana did not find any of it moving. She found it a problem to be dismantled. She called platform executives. She called publicists. She called 2 senators and a man whose title I didn't catch but whose voice went pale when he heard hers. She offered enough money to buy a small nation with a coastline. She had lawyers issuing takedowns faster than the internet could screenshot them. The internet won without noticing there was a fight. I watched her work the phones for 3 hours, and somewhere in the second hour, the facade I'd spent a week bouncing sarcasm off simply came apart. Her voice stayed level. Her hands did not. She kept squaring the same stack of papers over and over, aligning corners that were already aligned, and I remembered a whiteboard question from a live stream and understood that Diana Vale was, for the first time since I'd met her, afraid. It has 80 million believers, she said, not looking at me. My entire team can't slow it by 1%. I noticed. If it reaches midnight, she stopped. She didn't finish it. She didn't have to. At midnight, I wouldn't be rumored to be dying. I would be dying. Diana. I took the papers out of her hand so she'd stop destroying them. Look at me, you're using your problem-solving voice. This is my problem-solving voice. It's the voice people use right before they make a sacrifice. I've heard it once tonight already. Don't. Here is the thing I finally understood 3 hours and 80 million tears too late. You cannot delete a rumor. The internet does not let go of a good story because you asked nicely or sued politely. The takedowns, the money, the lawyers, all of it was trying to subtract. And the internet had never once, in its entire existence, subtracted anything. But it would happily replace a story with a better one. We're not deleting it, I said. Diana looked up. We're beating it. A dying billionaire is a good story. You know what's a better one? I opened a live stream. 80 million people joined in under a minute, joined to watch a doomed man deliver his final message. Phones up, cellos ready. I looked directly into the camera with the dark circles I'd earned honestly over years of double shifts. I have incredible news, I said. The doctors were wrong. Every test came back clean this morning. I'm completely cured. It's a medical miracle. Diana stared at me like I had finally, genuinely lost my mind on international television. Then the comments changed. Because the internet loves a dying billionaire, but it worships a miracle. A tragic death is a good cry. A man walking out of his own funeral is a celebration, and the internet would always rather celebrate. He beat it. Iron Palm can't even be killed. The mountain endures. News channels that had been running tribute segments cut live to my recovery. Cured spread faster than dying had ever dreamed of moving. At 11:58, the recovery rumor overtook the illness. At midnight, the lights flickered. 2 competing rumors detected. Higher belief accepted. Status perfectly healthy. I exhaled for what felt like the first time in 3 hours. Diana crossed the room and grabbed my collar with both hands. Never, she said, do that again. I fixed it. You live-streamed your own death to 80 million people and solved it by lying harder. When you say it in that order, it sounds reckless. It was reckless. It worked. She didn't let go of my collar. That was the part I noticed. Her grip was white-knuckled and her hands were still shaking, and for 1 full hour tonight, while I was doing math about story structure, Diana had genuinely believed she was going to lose me. My phone stayed dark. No new rumor, no reality update, no forged grief, no manufactured relief. Whatever was happening in the 6 inches between her hands and my collar had not been written by 80 million strangers. It had no timestamp. It belonged entirely to her. The system could not fake it, which meant it was real. Neither of us said that either. She let go of my collar, smoothed it flat with a precision that fooled no one, and went to stand by the window with her back to me, straightening a curtain tie that was already perfectly straight. Thank you, I said, for not selling a coastline. I would have, she said to the glass. That's the part I'm angry about. Across the city, a man I'd humiliated by hip toss and inconvenienced by existing had watched the entire thing from beginning to end. Sterling Cross was arrogant, disloyal, and wore his suits a half-inch too tight to prove a point nobody had asked about. But he was not stupid. He had watched a dying man cure himself with a sentence, and he had learned the lesson the rest of the internet was too busy crying to notice. The truth had never won a single round of this. Not once. The stronger story won every time, and a story unlike a fortune or a marriage or a martial arts technique was something Sterling knew exactly how to build. My phone buzzed one last time before I put it down. New rumor detected. Believers 12,000 and climbing. Origin anonymous. Subject Julian Vale. Category financial. Projected overwrite midnight. I didn't know it yet, but that was the first brick. Sterling didn't accuse me. That was the part I respected later, in the way you respect a knife after it's already in you. He built a story. It started at dawn with a grainy video of me walking into a private bank I had never entered. By noon, there was security footage of money leaving a Vale Group account. By 2, an anonymous employee had come forward, trembling voice, blurred face, to say he'd stayed quiet for years about what the CEO's husband was really doing with the company's money. Then the invoices. Then the recordings, my own voice, saying things I'd never said, discussing sums I'd never touched. $50 million. Secret husband loots the Vale fortune. The rumor didn't crawl, it sprinted. And here was the genius of it, the thing that told me exactly who was pulling the strings. The internet was bored of me. The silent genius, the humble billionaire, the mountain that waits, that story had peaked. It had nowhere left to climb. But a thief, A con artist who'd married a grieving widow and quietly drained her empire, that was a new story. A better one. The internet took it the way it takes everything better. Diana's crisis team did what it had done for the illness rumor, which is to say everything uselessly. Takedowns, lawyers, money. Sterling had learned the same lesson I had one beat earlier, and from the wrong side of it, you don't fight a story with facts. You fight it with a bigger story. And he'd made sure I didn't have time to build one. The board called an emergency vote at 9. By 10, there were reporters at the gates. He's had months to plan this, I said, watching the believer count climb past 4 million. Since the pool, probably, since he realized the rule was real. Diana's jaw was tight. You sound almost impressed. I'd be more impressed if he'd bought a suit that fit. She didn't laugh, she'd stopped laughing an hour ago. She was already looking at the clock, and I recognized the expression because I'd worn it during the illness rumor. It was the look of someone doing the math and hating the answer. At midnight, the house shook, not flickered, shook. This was the biggest overwrite yet, and reality groaned, taking it on. Files bloomed across the study desk out of nothing. My bank account refreshed $50 million sitting under my name like it had always been there. The company's records rewrote themselves line by line. My authorization appearing on transfers I'd never seen. On the security monitor, footage I knew was fake finished becoming true, frame by frame, until the man walking into the bank had my face and my walk and my tired eyes. The doorbell rang at 12:04. I have never heard a doorbell sound like a verdict before. Reginald answered it because Reginald would announce the apocalypse in the same tone he used for dinner. He returned with 4 police officers and a detective in a rumpled beige coat who looked like he hadn't slept since a previous administration. Julian Vale, the detective said, holding up a warrant that reality had made airtight. You're under arrest for the theft of $50 million from Vale Group. Every piece of evidence he had was perfect. It was perfect because the universe had personally perfected it. Then Diana stepped between us. And I finally understood what the overwrite had really cost, because it hadn't only rewritten the bank and the footage. It had rewritten her. I could see it in her face, new memories laid down at midnight like fresh concrete. She remembered discovering the missing money months ago. She remembered confronting me in this exact study. She remembered me lying to her, holding her hands and lying, and she remembered the specific way her heart had gone cold when she realized the man she'd married was a thief. The system had given her every reason to hate me. Her eyes were full of a betrayal that had never happened, and it looked completely, devastatingly real. She should have moved aside. Every memory in her head was screaming at her to move aside. She didn't move. Mrs. Vale, the detective said, tired, please step away from him. No, ma'am, I remember the evidence. Her voice was quiet and it was shaking, and I watched her fight her own mind in real time. I remember finding the transfers. I remember you lying to me. I remember all of it. She was talking to me now, not the detective. Every part of me that the world just rewrote is certain you did this. Diana, and I am still standing here. She said it like she was as confused by it as I was. I don't have a reason. My memory doesn't have a reason. But I am not moving. There it was. The rule from that quiet midnight a week ago, proving itself the hard way. Genuine emotion cannot be created or erased by reality shifts. The universe had rewritten every fact she knew about me. It had not been able to rewrite the thing underneath the facts. She hated me with her whole memory and protected me with everything beneath it, and the collision was written all over her face. I put my hand on her shoulder gently and moved her aside myself. Let them take me, I murmured. Julian, Sterling needs to believe he won. He's careless when he wins. I've seen it. I let the officer take my wrist. Right now, the only thing more dangerous than that man's plan is his confidence, so let's feed it. They cuffed me in the doorway. As they walked me past the gates, past the cameras, past 4 million people watching their new favorite villain get exactly what the story demanded, I found Sterling at the edge of the crowd. He was smiling, he couldn't help it, so I smiled back. That worried him. Good, it should have. My phone in an officer's evidence bag buzzed against my hip. Reality updated. Julian Vale thief. Diana Vale memory rewritten. Emotional record unresolved. Contradiction detected. They gave me one phone call. I used it on Diana. Sterling scheduled a press conference, she said before I could speak. Tomorrow, noon. He's going to announce he's protecting Vale Group from the criminal who manipulated me. Good. That is not good, Julian. It's perfect. He wants everyone watching. A man who wanted to win would quietly take over. A man who scheduled a stage wants to be seen winning. I lowered my voice because the detective was pretending not to listen. That's his flaw. He can't resist an audience, so we're going to give him one. But first we needed the one thing reality couldn't reach. Because here was the crack in the whole system, the thing I'd been turning over since the house stopped shaking. The overwrite rewrote what people believed. It rewrote the bank, the footage, the records, Diana's memory, everything connected to the story. But it had never once rewritten a thing that no one knew existed. It couldn't edit a document it didn't know to look for. Diana's father had built exactly that. A private archive, 3 floors beneath company headquarters, air-gapped, no internet, no network, no public access, no one outside the family aware it was there. Every original transaction Vale Group had ever made, stored offline in a vault the rumor had never heard of. If the true history of the 50 million still existed anywhere in the world, it was down there. Diana went that night. She called me back from the vault at 2 a.m. and her voice had changed. I found it, she said. The original transfer before the rumor, before any of it. A pause. It came from a shell company. The shell company is Sterling's. He hadn't invented a theft and pinned it on me. He'd committed a real one months ago, quietly, and then used the rule to move the blame onto the most convenient villain the internet could love. He actually stole it, I said. He actually stole it. And then he made the world forget. Sterling took the stage at noon in a dark suit and makeup covering a bruise I hadn't given him yet. Behind him, 30 feet tall, my face beside the words $50 million betrayal. 200 reporters, a live audience of several million. They brought me in handcuffs. Officially, the department was cooperating with a related proceeding. Unofficially, half the city now believed I owned the police station, and no one wanted to be the man who tested it on camera. Julian, Sterling said, magnanimous, savoring it. Any last explanation? I lifted my cuffed hands. These are extremely uncomfortable and I'd like that noted. The live stream laughed. Sterling didn't. Then Diana walked onto the stage and connected the archive drive to the room system. The original transaction filled the screen behind Sterling's own head. His shell company, his authorization, his account months before I'd ever been dragged into this. The ballroom made a sound like a held breath. Sterling recovered fast, I'll give him that. Fabricated, he said. He controls what people believe. He married a rumor. He became rich on a rumor. Now he's forging evidence like everything else. That was the moment I needed Harper. Ask him why he told you the money was already ours, I said to her across the stage. Harper had been standing off to the side, uncommitted, doing what she always did, calculating the nearest sympathetic camera. But her face changed because the memory was hers, not the internet's. She'd been there. You said, she said slowly to Sterling, that Julian was manipulating my mother. You said the money was already ours. You said, Harper, Sterling's voice sharpened, don't be emotional, not now. Wrong sentence. Harper had forgiven cheating and lying and a great many things. But no one had ever told her not to be emotional in front of several million people, and something in her simply detonated. He used me, she said into her own microphone, and the comments exploded. Sterling felt it slipping. And a man like Sterling, when he feels a thing slipping, does not let go quietly. He grabs. Fine. He turned to the cameras, arrogant to the last, because arrogance was the only move he had left. You want the truth? Any rumor about me becomes real at midnight too. If enough idiots believe it, that's the game he's been playing. He gave the public a better story and reality obeyed. I simply did it first. I built the evidence. I moved the accounts. And that 50 million, he was shouting now, not seeing the room anymore, only the winning, that 50 million was mine before this busboy ever crawled into the story. The ballroom froze. Sterling heard himself. 1 second too late. The confession went out on the stronger story. The internet had been starving for all along, not a thief husband, but a villain unmasked, live on camera. The believer count didn't climb. It erupted. Sterling stole it. Sterling framed him. He just admitted it on the mic. My phone in the evidence bag buzzed against the detective's hand. Viral consensus approaching. Higher belief detected. Projected overwrite midnight. Sterling saw it on my face that I'd won, that the reset was already coming for him. And he did the one thing that guaranteed the ending. He lunged at me. My body moved before my brain had opinions. I didn't decide anything. One turn, one step, and the activation condition the universe had been holding in reserve since a courtyard full of weeping monks finally, quietly triggered. Falling mountain. The opponent must strike first. Sterling's own momentum carried him up and over my hip and flat onto the ballroom stage in front of 200 reporters with a sound like a dropped bookshelf. I looked down at him. I finally found a practical use, I said, for the Swiss monks. The police pulled him up. He was still shouting that it was fake, that I controlled reality, that none of it counted. But he'd confessed on a hot mic to 200 reporters, and the archive in the vault had never once answered to rumors. They read him his rights on the strength of the only two things the internet had never been able to edit, a man's own words and a truth nobody had known to look for. The reality overwrite, as it always did, waited for midnight. When it came, it was the largest the system had ever run. Reality updated. Sterling cross thief. The evidence points to him, it always did. And then before I could feel anything close to relief, one more line printed itself under it. A line I had never seen, in a color the notifications had never used. Warning, reality stability critical. Too many contradictory overwrites detected. System destabilizing. A choice will be required. The system had spent barely a week and a half handing me things I never asked for. That night, for the first time, it asked me a question. Reality stability critical. Too many contradictory overwrites detected. Select one outcome to anchor. Keep current reality, wealth, marriage, and memories retained. Restore original reality, all rumor-created changes reversed. I read it in Diana's study, the drive from the archive still warm in my pocket, Sterling's confession still trending 3 floors below the rest of my life. Keep it, and I stayed rich. I stayed married. Diana kept 2 years of a history with me. But every day of that history had been written by strangers online. Her house rearranged around me, her staff taught my name, her daughter reassigned. and pieces of her own heart forced to make room for a man a live stream had assigned her. Restore it and I lost all of it, the money, the company, the mansion, the marriage. Diana would forget she was my wife. Harper would go back to being the ex who pointed at me across a ballroom. Sterling's real crime would stay. The offline archive had never been networked, so the truth of the theft would hold. But Diana and I would become strangers who'd never actually met. Diana read it over my shoulder. Keep it, she said immediately. You don't mean that. I remember our wedding. It never happened. I remember the first night you were sick in that house and I sat up with you. Her voice frayed at the edge. I was there, Julian. You were at a convenience store buying nothing because I was the one at the convenience store. I turned to face her. To me, all of it is a beautiful thing that strangers wrote. To you, it's your life. That's exactly the problem. Explain the problem then, slowly, so even I can hear it. You never got to choose me. I said it as gently as I knew how, which wasn't very. A live stream assigned you a husband. You've been generous to a stranger the internet handcuffed you to. And if I keep this, if I let you spend your life on a marriage a rumor built, I'll never know if any of it started as yours. You deserve to have met me on purpose. For the first time since the night she appeared in my hallway, Diana looked afraid. So you're going to erase me, she said. You won't remember, that's the mercy of it. I'll remember losing you. She caught my sleeve. That's the cruelty of it. The timer appeared, 60 seconds to anchor. She kissed me, no cameras, no reporters, no contract, no rumor waiting to become true at midnight, just her hands on my face and a countdown neither of us was looking at. If you erase this, she said against my mouth, find me again. I will. It took you 2 years the first time. I had scheduling conflicts. 10 seconds. I looked at her one more time, memorizing the real thing so at least one of us would keep it. I selected Restore Original Reality. The study went white. I woke up on the floor of my apartment. The folding chair was back beside the mattress. The radiator was making its old threats. My phone was cracked in the exact place it had been cracked before any of this, and when I checked the account out of the same reflex as always, the balance read $63. No certificate, no marble. No enormous fluffy disaster of a dog asleep on my feet, just the country-shaped stain on the ceiling back where it belonged. I searched her name because I couldn't not. Diana Vale, CEO Vale Group, Sterling Cross, arrested for the theft of $50 million the archive had held. The truth had survived even without me. Harper had quietly deleted every photo of Sterling from her feed. The engagement party had still happened. But in this version, I'd been thrown out by security before I ever pointed at a balcony, before a single joke, before the internet ever learned my name. To the entire world, I was a busboy who'd made a scene at a party and gotten dragged out. That was all I'd ever been. I went back to work doubles because rent doesn't care what timeline you saved. You look terrible, my manager said on the third night. I got divorced. You've never been married. That's what she said too. For 4 days, nothing happened. Diana gave a calm press statement about Sterling's arrest and did not look for me because to her I was Harper's forgettable ex and nothing else. I told myself I'd done the right thing. On the good hours, I even believed it. On the fourth night, I came home from a double shift and there was someone standing outside my door. No bodyguards, no suitcases, no diamond ring. Diana in a plain coat holding a small silver picture frame. Frame was empty. I stopped at the top of the stairs. You don't know me. No, she agreed. I've been dreaming about a man I've never met. She turned the empty frame in her hands. In the dreams we were married, you hated olives. I do hate olives. You bought a building because a billboard annoyed you. That's financially irresponsible. You called my daughter your stepdaughter. Something in her almost smiled and didn't quite make it. In the dreams, I lost you. I don't remember being your wife, Julian. She looked up, and her eyes were doing the thing the system had never once been able to fake. But I remember exactly how it felt when you were gone. There it was, the rule from that quiet midnight, keeping its last promise. Genuine emotion cannot be created or erased by reality shifts. The universe had deleted the marriage, the memories, the history. It had not been able to touch the grief, and grief that survives a rewrite is just love with nowhere left to go. I made one stupid joke at a party, I said. That's all I actually did. The rest of it, the marriage, the 2 years, none of that was real. The marriage wasn't. She stepped closer. I checked. There's no record, no contract, no internet deciding for either of us, which means whatever I'm standing here feeling is the one part nobody wrote for me. Diana, you made me fall in love with you. She said it like an accusation, fierce and quiet and absolutely certain. And then you deleted yourself to be noble about it, so. She planted a hand flat against my chest and pushed the door open behind me. You are going to take responsibility for that. She kissed me slow this time, deliberate, no audience to perform for and no rule to outrun. When she finally drew back, her forehead resting against mine, her voice was barely more than breath. Stay, she said. It wasn't a request and we both knew it. Her hand found mine and drew me back over the threshold. I'm not letting you disappear on me twice. It was not a headline, it was a decision. The apartment door swung shut behind us. The radiator for once didn't matter. The rest of that night belonged to no one but us. We married 3 weeks later. No ballroom, no 400 guests. No livestream monitor catching my worst angle, no orchestra, no ice sculptures quietly melting into a drainage problem. A A registry office, a board clerk, Martha crying into a handkerchief she'd clearly brought for the purpose, and Reginald announcing the rings, madam, in the exact tone he'd once used for dinner and for the apocalypse. No rumor made it happen, no consensus anchored it. When Diana kissed me at the end of it, nothing in the universe updated because there was nothing left to correct. It was just true. It had been true the whole time, under everything the internet had piled on top of it. My phone stayed dark in my pocket. It has stayed dark ever since. I still work, though not doubles anymore, and not because a rumor made me a billionaire. Diana runs her empire and I fix the parts of it that are, in her words, too obedient. We argue about it over breakfast and I win maybe a third of the time, which she insists is generous. It's the best job I've ever had, mostly because I'm the one who chose it. My phone has stayed dark for months. No consensus. No midnight. No glowing screen deciding who we are while we sleep. Just the slow, unglamorous, entirely unrewritable work of two people building a life on purpose. Diana is well along now, far enough that she's stopped pretending the tailored blazers still close, far enough that her hand drifts to the curve of her stomach without her noticing. It's the old tell, the one from the live stream, the stillness she used to wear when she was afraid. It isn't fear anymore. She goes quiet and rests her palm there and listens for something only she can feel, and the first time I caught her doing it, she claimed she'd been straightening her blouse. I let her have it. I notice everything. I've just learned which things to keep to myself. We never announced it. No statement, no post, no clip cut to violins. For the first time, something enormous was happening to us, and the internet had no opinion, because the internet had no idea. That was the entire point. She caught me watching her across the kitchen and raised the eyebrow that used to make board members confess to things. "You're staring," she said. "I'm memorizing. Occupational habit." She crossed the room, took my hand, and pressed it flat against the warm curve where our daughter was, according to Diana, already practicing her posture. I felt the small, stubborn kick of a person who had never trended, never been voted into being, never existed because 80 million strangers decided she should. No rumor made her. No midnight anchored her. She was the one thing in my life that had been built the ordinary way by the two of us on purpose, in a world with the cameras finally off. "Real," Diana said, not a question, just the truest word either of us owned. "Real," I agreed, and it was, entirely ours, entirely unwritten, the first future either of us had ever got to keep. Bentley, asleep and enormous in the corner, snored through the whole moment. Some things survive every version of reality. We've stopped asking how.